We are back with another edition of the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thank you for spending time with us again. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Good morning, Alan.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Good morning. And with us from Sweden, Michael Sena, publisher of The Dispatcher and transportation consultant. Great to see you again, Michael.
Great to be back. Fred,
Nice having
Alan.
you.
Yes.
The November-December edition of The Dispatcher has arrived, and I really enjoyed your opening comments, Michael, where you take your readers along on the couple of trips you took over the summer to the U.S. and Canada, fishing and family, I guess we could call it, and
Yeah.
your methods of transportation and observations of how others were getting around.
Well, it was the second trip. The first one was back in May and June. This one was particularly for fishing. I took 2 weeks for a 1 week fishing trip, and getting there and getting back was if you're going to Labrador and you're going to a place where there are no roads, the only way you can get in there is on a float plane. So there was a lot of trains, starting with a train trip, and planes and automobiles and float planes and four-wheel all-terrain vehicles. But as I said, I didn't need to take this trip, but I did, and I'm not sorry. I'm not going to apologize for all of the carbon that I put up into the atmosphere, because I saw friends that I hadn't seen in 5 years, dear friends who I've known for over 50 years, family and friends. What do you do? It's part of life. Hopefully someday we will have ways of doing that without putting up all the carbon that we do, but we don't. So I'm not sorry.
And well, the value of being in person with those people.
Yeah, well, it's like seeing you and Alan back in May. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that. It's just we can share the screens together, but sharing a meal and sharing time together is totally different. So we'll continue doing
Yep, I agree 100%.
Meanwhile, the lead feature in the latest Dispatcher is headlined "The Business of Transport Systems," and you start off with a look at what's coming from Volvo and its owner Geely, and you've got kind of a personal history there, Michael.
Yeah, well, I worked for Volvo, for AB Volvo, when Volvo cars and Volvo trucks and buses were all one company. And yeah, there's a bit of history, and some of my friends who are with whom I worked or on the mailing list will recognize some of the things. I don't necessarily name names, but it'll be familiar to them. But I start with sort of an overview of the journey that Volvo has taken from being a part of another company or part of a big company to then being part of other companies, particularly Ford, and then part of Geely, and seeing what's happened to it over the course of these years, and where it is now and where it seems to be going. And I use that as sort of an introduction to the main point of the article, which is where is the industry headed? Where is the car industry, not the truck industry, but the car industry? Where's it going? I've divided the car companies into 4 segments and put the companies into those segments. So on the upper left hand side, I've got one company, it's Tesla, where there is a high level of control. And by a high level of control, I mean control of everything, control of the value chains, control of the software, the hardware, build as much as you can. And in the left-hand section, it's a limited number of models. And of course, Tesla has a very limited number of models. Under Tesla, on the limited number of model side, I've got 2 companies, BMW and Mercedes. And these 2 companies, while they have a limited number of models, they have also followed the rest of the car industry in having tier one suppliers and tier two suppliers. So they do a lot of work themselves, but they also have quite a number of partnerships where they're working with companies that are delivering to them. On the right-hand side, I've got companies which have both a large number of models and high level of control. And here I've got Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Kia. These companies have a great deal of control over their suppliers. They do quite a lot of work inside. They've got their own research groups. So they're closer in terms of control to Tesla than they are to the lower right-hand side, where we've got General Motors, Volkswagen, Stellantis, Ford, Nissan, Renault, and the Chinese company Geely. There are more companies, of course, and we could have SAIC in there and Build Your Dreams, but they're in that segment as well. And what I've done with these companies, what I've tried to do is to try to understand what the relationship is between how these companies operate and what their potential is for being in business in 20 years. And that's where this next diagram comes into play. What I've done is I've taken the market capitalization. So market capitalization, when I did this diagram last month for Tesla, it was $768 billion. The number of vehicles sold, and for Tesla, for the year 2022, and that's what this diagram is for, approximately 1.4 million. It's going to be closer, I think it's going to be closer to 2 million this year, but this is a specific time and place in 2022. And the market cap to vehicles sold for Tesla is 548. And I've done that for the other three groups. So the combined market capitalization of Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai Kia is 373 billion. The combined market cap for all of the companies listed in the lower right-hand side is 252 billion. And the market cap for BMW and Mercedes is 143 billion. And if you take these numbers and chart them of total vehicles sold, total vehicle sales for each of these groups by market capitalization, what you've got is a very strong picture of Tesla on its own, having sold or in the process of selling somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million in the next year, 2023. And then comes the three others in terms of their market cap to vehicles sold, with the largest group, Geely, Volkswagen, etc., having sold combined the largest number, but at the same time having the lowest value, the lowest valuation. And then what I've tried to do in the article is to hypothesize, what's the reason for this? What is it that the company is doing? And in this case, what is Tesla doing that's different from what Geely and General Motors and Volkswagen are doing? And then taking that to the next step and saying, well, what is the likelihood of these companies continuing to prosper, continuing to grow, or possibly just disappearing? And if we look at Stellantis is Chrysler, Fiat, Peugeot, Citroën. Is 4 companies that 10 years ago would you think of any of these companies merging with one another? Well, Fiat and Chrysler was kind of a crisis after the financial crisis in 2009 or so, but the merger with Peugeot and Citroën, I'm not really sure that you would think of that. The other thing that I've tried to do is to look at Geely, and that's why I've started with Volvo. look at Geely in terms of what it's doing compared to what some of the other companies in this group are doing. I mean, Volkswagen has Audi, Volkswagen, Skoda, the Seat. Now, I've got diagrams in the article which you can see how these companies are organized. Tesla compared to GM, or Tesla compared to particularly to Geely. I mean, Geely has got an enormous number of brands that they've come out with, and they keep popping them out. One of them we're going to talk about a little bit later, Zeeker, in the context of providing vehicles to Waymo. I mean, this is a brand that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere for what I say is absolutely no reason except to garner money through an IPO. But it's a strategy. Is that strategy going to work? Is that strategy going to be successful in the future? Or is the strategy which Tesla started with and which Tesla continues, that is, it's the old Ford strategy. It's when Ford said, we're going to own everything. We're going to be responsible for everything because we're not going to give the value of any part of our vehicle to anyone else. And that's Musk's whole idea. That's the basic strategy. BMW and Mercedes, to a certain degree, have this. Will they move closer to the Tesla model? I think so. I think they're going to be doing more and more of their own work as opposed to putting more and more of it out to tier ones and tier twos. But my take on this, my bet is that it's, in terms of valuation, Toyota is number 2. It was number 1 for quite a long time, but it's number 2 to Tesla. My bet is that Toyota, with its structure, with its brands, with its reach, will in 10 to 20 years be around when maybe Tesla won't, for other reasons, for many reasons, and the volatility of the company, the owner, and the driving force in the company will say a lot about it in the future. So that's what the article is about. It's one that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and putting together, and there's a lot more in it than I've been able to describe here. But that's the basic idea.
Well, Michael, the way you put this together and is and highlighted here is so stark. It's contained in a lot of discussions that are other people's discussions that are out there that sort of suggest this. I don't think they put it in quite the same way as you do, so as stark as you do. But it really is when one sits back and looks at this. We've sort of commented a little bit about it in the past as you were building up on this, but and the comparison to Henry, is in some sense somewhat stark, and you've put it together. I mean, you can imagine doing this chart in maybe 1915 or 100 years ago, let's put it in 1922, with the large number of other car companies that were out there at that time competing with that. And guess what? Who won? I mean, really, Henry, that may have been the time in which Henry won. And it would be nice to go back and see if we could get the data, put it out there like this, to see if it would look. I'm not sure that necessarily we would, the volume sales out there probably aren't. It's not the same chart with respect to volume sales, but certainly in terms of the number of companies that were out there trying to manufacture vehicles, thinking they could compete, thinking they could, probably out there maybe not having the opportunity to basically vertically integrate. It's not really a vertical integration. It's a non-vertical disintegration, because these companies have they could have been vertically integrated, but they've decided that they disintegrated themselves into the entities. And of course, I don't know, as the way I sort of read from the outside again, the industry, it just seems as if Tesla looks around and sees if they can buy it, and they figure they can make it much better, much more quickly, much better, and more inexpensively by making it rather than buying it. And it's everybody always has a make or buy decisions in these things, and it seems as if Tesla is making it has decided making it is really the way to go here, and that translates into control. I mean, that's the
But actually,
advantage of
it it
go
it, it translated into control, but control translates into holding on to the money that you would normally put out. I mean, so if you look at
yeah,
this all started with the companies beginning to what's your core competency, and this is a strategic consulting saying core competency, that's the most important thing, and then you don't need to own everything. And so all of the companies like General Motors and Ford, and they lost what they had. They gave away most of what they had to their suppliers, and then they had turned around and ended up not owning anything really important, and that's showing up in their valuation. What Tesla has done, Tesla rightly, Musk correctly says, the more we own, the more value we have. The more value we have, the more value we can that people can put their money in and own that as well. So Tesla is a clear case of what Ford could have been, what General Motors could have been, if they had held on to what they had developed and owned, as opposed to simply saying, it's not our core competency. Our core competency is designing cars. It's not even manufacturing cars. It's not even owning all of the components that are in there. We'll let other people do that, and then we'll buy it. The problem with that is that when you let other people do it, they can sell that to any number of companies, and you don't have anything special in your car that the car next to you doesn't have. So the companies that are in the top group, this group up here, the Toyota, Honda, and Kia, they own more of what they've got. And if they don't own directly, they own it through ownership and very close partnerships with the companies that with whom they're working. And this is the Japanese way. It's been the South Korean business way as well, as opposed to the way that the companies have been trying to work. Is a good example of a company that's been trying to get back to own more and having failure after failure. It's Volkswagen with its software group. It shows how difficult it is once you've let it go to bring it back. And I think that's the conundrum for even companies like BMW and Mercedes. They want to bring things back, but it's really difficult to do that. And if you try to do it by buying a company, then you've got a culture clash that you're dealing with. So they could go out and they could buy Conti, or they could buy, Bosch. Well, they couldn't, but in theory they could. But this is why Tesla doesn't want to work with these companies, because it's their value. They sell you something, they own it. You kind of rent it for a while, and then they'll come back and they'll rent you the next iteration of their software.
I think on top of that, it's also a perspective of saying an entity is going to go out and manage as opposed to make. Although if you make yourself, you also have to manage it. But managing an outside entity rather than an inside entity is a whole completely different thing. So are you part of the same team, or are you whatever, either arm's length, who knows what, the DD, and whatever, and all the other things that go with that.
Yeah.
And I think certainly one of the things that comes out in the Musk books, with respect to Musk, is that he wants the designers in the line with the manufacturing, so that as they iterate this darn thing, that they're in close proximity to what's happening, as opposed to, hey, I'm the designer, now I have to go deal with an outside entity that's going to do the manufacturing of it and all that. I mean, I guess it's good for the consulting firms, and it's good for the McKinseys of this world or something like that. I don't know what it is, but my goodness, and maybe that's what we've been teaching for the last 50 years. In our best universities is, I can just manage this stuff, and and as long as I have two suppliers, I can get them to compete against each other or whatever,
Exactly.
as opposed to
Exactly.
having a vision. Damn it, and we're going down this road, and it's, to me, the Tesla dynamic looks. I don't know that much about it. All the same as the Henry dynamic, and we know what happened with the Henry dynamic, and it looks like, I mean, you look at not only the vehicle, but how it's being fueled, where the energy is going to come from, and at least what I unfortunately happen to listen to is continued even today, given all the problem that driverless has and so on, the drumbeat that the real big, potentially volatile value of Teslas and the whole automation robo taxi thing.
I don't believe that.
I
But
know you
that's, I
don't
mean,
believe
I know,
that,
I
but
don't believe that.
but
Yeah.
but but
Tesla's Tesla's value is clear. It's there today, and they're not delivering robo taxis. They're not. What they're doing is that they're delivering cars. Tesla is a car company. They're delivering cars. They're doing it in a way that they're generating more and more sales with less and less costs and less investment. I mean, part of what they're doing is you could say they have non-unionized workers. Tesla workers make 20%, 30% less than a Detroit worker, and it's going to give even more. But that's all part of it. That's part of that's part of the entire approach. It's a singular approach, which is very simple. We're going to deliver cars. We're going to make money on those cars, and we're going to make more and more. Musk has said we're going to be first to 20 million. I say Toyota is going to be first to 20 million, and that's if I'm betting, what I'm putting my money in. I own Teslas. I own Toyotas. I don't own Teslas. I'm betting that it's going to be Toyota and not Tesla, but I could lose. Tesla could easily get to 20 million if they keep doing things right. But will Geely get to 20 million? Will BYD get to 20 million? Maybe, but they've got a wind in the sail. That wind is coming from Beijing. We don't. There's no wind in. There's wind in Tesla's sails as well, but they're different. I mean, they're all over the place. They're building in China. They're building in Germany. They'll build in other countries. They're building in the U.S. But what I've tried to do in this article is just open up the discussion so that people can begin thinking about how they're making their decisions, and then decide what to do based on that.
But
Okay.
just to debate it with you just a little bit, and of course you've looked at it much more deeply and from the inside that I haven't had the opportunity to see. But I still look at the sort of the vertical assembly integration of Tesla, being in all these pieces, that and actually one could argue maybe being in the front of all these pieces, whether they're in the front or not in the front, in the front of the fueling of electric vehicles, in the front of the storage, in the front of the distribution, in the front of the gigafactory manufacturing facilities. I don't know how to. I haven't seen a good comparison of what workers make at Tesla versus what the new UAW contract is. I mean, I think one has to break it down to which employees is one talking about? Because in fact, the whole issue of where the industry is going is that the UAW worker of the 1950s and 1960s is not the UAW member of the 2030s. I think the amount of automation that exists in the production of the vehicle itself is, I think, vastly changing, or that's my perception from, again, not a really in-depth look at the darn thing. But to get to the 20 million number, if that's really the aspiration to get to the 20 million, to sell the 20 million, one, your price level has to be down such that the demand can afford to pay for it. It's not the luxury good of the selling of the, of a million or a half a million or 150,000 vehicles or 128 vehicles, whatever, where you can afford where your margins are so great on each vehicle sale that you don't have to sell so many, and that's what creates the luxury good bubble. The 20 million is the number is the is a is that's a consumer product, and therefore in terms of producing it, um, you can't afford much labor input into that darn thing, because it's a labor input per unit, and that labor input per unit for a luxury good ends up being a whole lot greater than the human labor input per entity at the 20 million level. So
We
all
could
that
spend,
fits into all
yeah.
this discussion here, and who's going to survive out there to do that, which is the whole question here, right, is what you put in there. So go ahead, Michael. Let's
Look,
this is why we enjoy doing this, right?
yeah, BMW, Mercedes are selling. I mean, at the end of this year, Tesla is going to be selling about the same number of cars as BMW sells and Mercedes sells
Yeah,
each.
yeah.
Is Tesla a luxury brand? From my standpoint, it's not, based on the finish and everything else. But it's got very few models, and those models are covering a great number of prospective buyers. They're not luxury buyers, but to the extent that they have to pay a lot of money for a Tesla, puts them into a luxury category, but they're not luxury buyers. Model 3 buyer is not buying a luxury car. They're buying a car that's electric, and they're paying a premium for that. And I mean, if they get to 20 million, they're going to have people who would normally buy maybe not a Rolls Royce, but buy a Mercedes, who are going to be buying a Tesla for reasons that only they can decide. So I don't see this as a luxury. The Tesla's going to move down into the Stellantis arena in order to sell 20 million cars. I don't see that happening, and I say that clearly I think I say it clearly in the article. They're going to get to 20 million cars by stealing all of the buyers of cars from everybody else.
Yeah, well, what I mean by luxury good, I'm not using the general term of a luxury good. I consider, maybe it's only me, I consider a luxury good in which its sales cost, what you get in revenue, is a whole heck of a lot more than what it costs you per unit to manufacture it. Okay, so in a consumer product, there's very little margin per unit, and therefore, to make any amount of money, you got to sell a whole heck of a lot of them. Whereas in the luxury market, the amount that you make on any one is very large, so that you don't end up having to sell so many to have enough of a margin to be able to stay
Yeah.
in business. Okay,
Okay.
I mean that I'm looking at it that way, and really, to me, where Tesla is when I look at it as in the expected sale of 1.8 million vehicles this year. Okay, their margin, while they've reduced their pricing to be able to sell the 1.2, the revenue to sell the 1.8 million vehicles this year, they've taken a reduction in the margin so that they can then, go expand out on the demand curve to have more people buy them, and so to be able to sell them. But that then when you sum up over the margin per vehicle that they're getting, and their profitability is really attractive. And then if you then take that out to be able to get to the valuation piece, the 768 billion, and see how you extrapolate that out, because that's an expected integral of the margin over all the products sold in the future. If you believe Wall Street, then in fact that's the positioning that they're making, and that they expect to be able to reduce the price and maybe reduce the margin, but that reduction in price allows them to be able to go and sell 20 million vehicles, and therefore amass enormous profits out of this. So anyway, that's the way I think about it. Whether or not, I don't want to compete with the economists. I am not an economist. I don't want to suggest I'm an economist. I buy high, sell low. What are you going to do?
Yep.
This is a great chart. I mean, I showed this to my students we went through this on Wednesday, and I mean, whoa! I mean, this is such a telling chart, as well as the other graph.
Terrific, Michael. Thank you. And sort of related to all this, of course, Alan, in the Smart Driving Cars newsletter, you're starting with a piece by Glenn Mercer headlined "Thoughts on the China Export Boom." And that's something that I know Michael's focused on for quite some time.
Quite a while, yes.
Yeah, and that's fine, and I think it ties in with this sort of other article in which one of the new brands that Michael just mentioned is out there, putting out there. I guess it suggests that they're giving proposals to Waymo as to be Waymo's vehicle manufacturer.
Right, Zeeker.
And I mean, every
Zeeker
time
wants
I
their
see that,
CM1E,
yeah,
they want to be the next robo-taxi from Waymo.
Yeah, well, I would want to be the next robo-taxi too. I mean, there are a lot of wannabes out there. I understand the wannabe, but my goodness, are you gonna be? And I, that one, given the geopolitical structure, I can't see that happening. I mean, and I don't even I mean, I've been looking for the articles or the press releases out of Waymo that would say refute this. Hey, we don't know these guys. What the heck? But apparently they do. I mean, otherwise they'd be out there saying, "Hey," because if I was out there, "Hey, I want to do a vehicle. I want to be the Waymo's vehicle manufacturer." If I went out there, Fred, we're going to be Waymo's vehicle manufacturer. Let's see how quickly the press release comes out. Oh, Kornhauser's full of whatever. I mean, he can't do it. He can't. And I mean, I don't. What? Really? We would permit that? Okay, we would allow that, given all the Buy American and everything that's in batteries and everything else and all that stuff, that's not going to come out, and then somebody's going to go out and then point to the Tesla's predictions of robo taxis really being where we're all going to be, and all of a sudden we're all going to be in robo taxis from a Chinese manufacturer. I don't believe it. Okay, but I'm just sitting here stirring the pot, I guess. And Waymo, come on, you need a vehicle. Okay.
Well, they started with the Chrysler Pacifica, which was perfect for their application. And then they moved to a Jaguar SUV,
Yeah,
which I see is less perfect, but it was more, let's say, people felt more special riding around in a Jaguar than they did riding around in a Chrysler
Right.
Pacifica,
I
mom's
guess
taxi.
that what Waymo wants is Waymo one to be a luxury good, and
Hmm.
we're seeing, and I guess luxury good is with Jaguar. Okay, and that's fine. And is it really with Geely? First of all, cut it out. Secondly, I mean, at least Jaguar is, I don't know, has some USA roots. And then, and and then
I'm
do
not
we
sure
get
what
to it?
I'm not sure what the USA roots of Jaguar are, but
Do
Well,
you
I
think
mean,
this had,
Ford
Alan?
didn't Ford own it or somebody, or I don't know
Alan,
what
might this have something to
yeah,
do with
yes, yeah.
Cruise having the origin, and this vehicle, the Zeeker, is also one without a steering wheel, etc. So, I mean, if the origin comes out for Cruise being their major competition, I guess right now, at least that was the
Oh,
case
Tuesday, you're
when it
setting me
comes
up,
to robo
Fred. You're
taxi.
setting me up, whatever. Um, sure, of course they need a vehicle like Origin.
Hmm.
Okay. But where are you going to get this vehicle?
Well, that's where
Okay.
Zeeker is saying
Local
they have
Motor,
the answer.
Local Motors was a U.S. company. They could have gone in there and tried to make help Local Motors, do that. There are other U.S. companies, I guess. Stellantis could build them a vehicle, I guess. Ford could build them a vehicle, I
Hmm.
guess.
Sure.
Maybe they could set up a, Tesla 2 company that would build them vehicles, I guess. They tried to build a vehicle themselves and decided, maybe appropriately so, that they weren't vehicle manufacturers, that they could find a vehicle manufacturer who would give it. Maybe they should, be with Volkswagen. Volkswagen has this Volkswagen bus, okay? But to do it with a Chinese company, I'm sorry. So that maybe then this company can take Waymo 1 into China, and then they can now give rides to, luxury rides to everybody in China. China, in my view, talk about something that's never going to happen. The Waymo 1 driver stack, as I see it, probably is the best spy stack ever made by man or woman. Would China really let a U.S. made spy stack drive around all the streets in China? Never. I mean, they wouldn't even let me collect GPS data and try to do a turn-by-turn navigation system with data on where the streets are. I mean, I really never did that. I only thought of doing that. Otherwise,
Hmm.
they're gonna
Hmm.
come and get me, or couldn't even have a GPS receiver. They're not going to put on these vehicles to give luxury rides throughout China a stack made by Alphabet. No way. I I don't know.
I'll throw this in. What's happening with all the Teslas being sold in China with that kind of
Where
technology?
are they manufactured? Are they manufactured in Fremont?
No,
No.
they're manufactured in China.
Who knows what the heck's going on in there? Who knows really what the software that's going on in there? I don't
Sure.
know. I mean, I don't know if it's the same software stack that comes in. Does I don't.
No.
Maybe somebody, write it down in the description below, and whatever. Tell us if in fact, Tesla is out there doing over the air updating from who knows what Fremont or where, I guess, Austin, of vehicles in China. I don't know what the over the air updating process is. And I don't know. I hope somebody, sends me a link and tells me what it is, or writes it in the description below, and lets us know. I
One thing I do
Doubt
know
it.
is that
Huh?
if you're doing any work involving updating of data, or including maps or anything else of software, the regulations that I know about, they're not written down, but they're the unstated regulations in China is that the server must be in China.
Yeah, I mean it's gone. It all has to be controlled, and they're not. I mean, China's not that stupid.
I mean, it's
They,
not that stupid as the US or
how would they let the National Security Agency of the USA be there, basically with cameras driving around all the streets and lidars and smidars and radars and bidars and everything else?
yeah.
Are we? I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm
Well, as
that
Alan would
wouldn't
say,
happen, would it?
we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah, no, and I don't want to know. Okay, but I'm just out here speculating. Sorry, people,
Well, the
whatever.
thing is that what I found interesting about this connection between Zeeker or Geely and Waymo was that the choice of Zeeker. As I said earlier, Zeeker is a brand that I never felt should exist. What Zeeker is doing is, and Link & Co. and a couple of other brands that come out of Geely, is basically taking sales away from Volvo. I mean, totally unnecessary. Polestar is another example. That brand could have easily been, and was, Polestar was part of Volvo. They owned it. They gave it away essentially and made it a separate brand of vehicle when it was a model within the Volvo stable. And then these companies, essentially are just taking pieces of what was Volvo and making them into other companies so that they can go do an IPO and bring money in. Zeeker as a car, where did it come from? Suddenly it was in, out of thin air. You've got a car called Zeeker being made by Geely that's called a luxury car. And that luxury car is in the context of all of the brands is considered higher luxury than Volvo. I mean, how? How do they do this? But there's a lot of sleight of hand that goes into this. So if I were Waymo looking for a real partner to work with, particularly in the United States, would I go to China and pick a car that's not even, they've sold several thousands of these cars. Would I choose a Zeeker? No, I wouldn't. So I don't know what's going on here. I have no idea what's behind this thing between Waymo and Geely, but there must be something. There must certainly be something.
So how well is Polestar doing, and how are their financials, and what is their stock price, and so on,
Yep.
and I mean, you look at sort of what happened in the driverless truck business. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Aurora went public on a SPAC. I
Yep.
mean, and they just announced their quarterly reports and so on, put out a press release about how they're gonna do stuff in 2024 and so on, and we're still at a gonna stage, and I
Yep.
wish them the best. To me, they're the best of the bunch. But where's their stock price? Buck 75. I
Yep.
mean, and where did it come out at? I guess like all SPACs, it came out at 11 or wherever the heck SPACs came out. These things have been Wall Street entities to get investors during the 2 years ago when everything was going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I bought high. I'm selling
Mm-hmm.
low. I mean, oh, geez, don't listen to me.
Moving on in the smart driving cars newsletter, Alan, Uber and Lyft have agreed to pay a combined $328 million for withholding money from drivers. This is a settlement in a case brought in by New York State. Eligible drivers are going to be able to file claims, I guess, for a piece of that. And Uber and Lyft have agreed to an earnings floor for drivers outside of New York City of $26 an hour. You have some comments about this?
I think that's great. I mean, Uber drivers deserve to earn, you know, a, a living and be able to feed their families for giving rides. That, Uber and Lyft should not be making money on the backs of people, working for nothing. And it's a great employment mechanism that allows people who basically allows them to think that they can run their own business or choose their own times and get the flexibility. I think that's all fantastic, and I use them all the time. Or not all the time. All the time I go to Newark Airport, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Uh, that's me, and the alternative is whatever, and it's great. Are they going to end up pricing themselves out of, hey, I can't afford it anymore? Uh, Likely. And they certainly haven't priced themselves into a situation in which I'll just take them, when I'm pulling money out of my own pocket, as opposed to, having the university pay for it. And so, yeah, but if we're going to provide good mobility, we've got to provide good mobility affordably, and the affordably has to be such that the cost of doing that, so that in production everybody gets paid, but when you add up the cost of doing that, it's affordable. And to me, the approach of doing it with a chauffeur, chauffeurs have never been in history affordable, and I don't know how we make chauffeuring affordable in the future, unless, of course, which is my motivation for being on this. We use the Moore's law and the advances in the information age, such that information is now digital, such as its replication is actually essentially zero. In other words, we've gone way down on the cost curve on that. It's not we have scribes writing the code of Waymo one driver. I mean, think about it. We have now, and we do regressions using Dojo, 10 to the eighth floating point instructions per second computation engines, which is the the real engine, I think, behind Tesla, to be able to do this and do this for practically nothing. Then maybe we can give rides that are affordable. But
The question here is really whether these Uber and Lyft, Lyft is,
yeah,
I don't know Lyft very well. I
yeah.
don't
I love
understand how
Lyft,
they're still in
whatever.
business, but Uber, they have a history of doing nasty stuff. I mean, what are these guys? Is it just we're going to give you a slap on the hand, on the wrist, and it's $328 million worth of money? Did they do something illegal, or I didn't quite understand what they were doing. If they were withholding $328 million from drivers, and the drivers have a right to get this money, how did they do that? I mean,
Well,
it sounds to me like they were doing something that they should be put in jail for.
I guess you have to. This is in New York State also, and in New York State, I guess you get put in jail for certain things and not put in jail for other things. I guess, I don't know to what extent white collar crime in New York is really prosecuted or not prosecuted. We
Yeah.
don't want to go into that, Michael. That is
Okay.
that
I
is
mean,
just such a, oh my goodness.
yeah. But I'll tell you
Uh,
one thing, if we're running a business for people who need a ride, and that business is going to be driverless, if this shows what kind of companies Uber and Lyft are, I wouldn't want them anywhere near that.
of
You
course
know,
not.
these
and
guys,
and, and they have nothing to bring, and
no, they
that's
haven't. No,
the whole
no.
that gets us to the whole business of Waymo joining up with Uber. What is that all about?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's the next, that's the,
What is Uber bringing to Waymo? They have the app. Great. Uber, you did a great job with the app is really good. I mean, whenever in my class, when I talk about these kind of, hey, this is a great app. Okay.
Uber, the Uber app.
Uber's app.
Hmm.
Okay. ride hailing app. It lets you see the car. It takes, the fundamental potential sketchiness out of a thing. You can see it coming. The problem with taxis, as you call them, you didn't know that they didn't keep you informed. I can look at my app. I can see exactly where the car is. I can see it coming. And if it does a little tweak, I call the guy up or gal up and say, hey, did you forget about me? Or why aren't you still coming to get me? And I'm the worst customer in the world because I have this great app. Okay. Jesus. I mean, the app trivial to create, to leapfrog that. I mean, that's what people do with apps. Okay. You know, who knows? Very few. So, that app is not to me the underpinning of Uber. Okay.
But Waymo must
And
have must have the same type of app.
of course they do.
Yeah.
And it
So
might be even better because guess what? They build it on top of that, and I'm sure they have to make sure about IP and make sure they're and all the other stuff and so on, and to
yeah.
spend their. But of course it is. Okay, so
So what is Uber bringing to the Waymo party?
a fee for the use, a finder's fee. Waymo is paying a finder's fee to Uber for finding a ride for Uber, for Waymo.
For Waymo.
Yeah. Waymo's in the business of giving rides. Okay. Okay. To get people to request a ride or to serve people, instead of dialing up a cab company or instead of dialing up an Uber, I can then be as a visitor to Phoenix with my Uber app and say, "Oh my goodness, the rides that are being offered to me are, a stretch limo, a black car, who knows what, Hyundai or Yugo, and a Waymo, okay, and there are prices there, and I get to pick one." And I look at, driverless, I'm going to pick it. And so Waymo would not have had an opportunity to find me, so they pay a finder's fee to Uber for me to then pick that. It's got to be. That's the only business case that could be there. Okay, and then a Waymo picks me up, and I take my selfie, and I know what to do, da 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 da, and everything's fine. Okay, and I have the university pay for whatever because, of course, I'm not a very good professor, and I don't look at if somebody else is paying, what do I care? And and I take it.
Well, the question, I mean, it's clear that Waymo wins in this situation because they're getting a ride that's pushed over. What is Uber getting out of this? What is the
they,
Uber
they they
driver?
get the finder's fee.
Yeah, but
They
yeah,
get
the
they
thing
get
is that
they get
this is
20
another
per
case.
they get 20% of what I'm charged, or what. I don't know what they didn't publish. They
It
don't tell
it
us,
doesn't
and I
doesn't
don't
tell you
even
what
want
the
to ask them because they're not going to tell me anyway. They're going
yeah,
to consider
it
it
doesn't tell you.
proprietary. Okay,
But what this
what
is
the
doing is
revenue share is.
it's taking rides away from Uber drivers.
Yeah,
Uber drivers are getting diddly squat from this.
you're right.
It's Uber's getting the money for as a finder's fee, but the drivers aren't getting anything.
Of course, because the drivers aren't doing anything. They aren't giving me the ride. The Waymo One driver is giving me the ride. The Waymo One driver deserves the 80% or this or whatever. If I would have chosen instead an Uber driver, then the Uber driver would get that money. All Uber is getting, I guess, is the finder's fee. Okay. Now, the finder's fee is produced by the Uber app. All right. Now, once I ride a Waymo 1, I'm sure Waymo 1 probably knows who wrote it. And then they're sending me email, or certainly Google knows. Every time I then go up Google, they've had their chat GPT thing. Oh, Alan, take Waymo 1 now. You just enjoyed a ride Waymo 1. How the hell did you know I enjoyed a ride Waymo? Oh, don't worry. We know. Okay, fine. And download this app. And so,
If you
I
were,
mean, the
if you
tough
were,
thing of any business, you know this, the tough thing of any business is getting a customer. And
the
then
tough
once you
thing
want
about
that
Uber
customer,
business,
you want to keep it.
the
Okay.
tough thing about the tough thing about Uber's business
Yeah.
is getting drivers and keeping drivers and not giving them
Yes,
over
I
to Lyft,
understand.
not having them go someplace else. If I were an Uber driver, how would I feel in Phoenix? How would I feel about this?
Uh, I would feel, oh my goodness, I'm not the happiest camper in the world. Okay.
No.
I'm there. Geez, if this happened in New York, I would be suing and whatever and getting Uber to shut this thing down. But this now, but now this assumes that the prices that are offered to me on the Uber app probably have that the Waymo system is even more expensive than the Uber driver. Okay. Because of course the
I don't.
Waymo is a luxury driverless. Oh my goodness. I can take a I'm not going to take a selfie in an Uber with an Uber driver. Waymo even puts out a commercial, put out on X, this thing basically displaying the potential sketchiness of an Uber driver or of a ride hailing driver. I mean, the company, how can a company who's established a partnership with another company, in fact, in one of its ads, show the potential fundamental sketchiness of the way that other company does business? I mean, who does this? I once, I once tried to get I sent a proposal to UPS because they needed some work that I thought ALK could do and
Mhm.
help them in their logistics and so on. And I sent them a response to their request for a proposal by FedEx, and they got it in a FedEx.
Uh-huh.
You think we won that one, Michael? That's how
I,
stupid I am. Okay.
yeah.
Holy hell. I mean,
In
true. It's true. It's true.
They
that's a
must have had
great
a good laugh.
story, Alan.
Must have had a good laugh.
Well,
In
whatever. You win
response to
some,
what
you
you were
lose
saying about
some.
the cost of the rides, Uber has said that the cost of the ride, driverless ride from Waymo, is the same, comparable. So
It's
they're
the
charging the same,
same.
right?
and, and Lewis Aaron, my student, my former student, sent in an email. Oh my goodness. Waymo is going to capture human oriented uh, capture revenue from a human oriented good using robo costs. Okay. Guess what the margin is to Waymo on that? Like this. Because they get this at the price of this thing at the same price as if you had to pay a human. So a
Hmm.
robo is earning what a human earns at scale. Guess what it costs you to do things robo style? That's why it ends up, that's the luxury good aspect of this thing. Where in fact, what could they be doing if they were really in the business of giving rides to people who needed rides? Guess what they would do? They take that margin that they're making, that luxury margin, and squeeze it down to this. Why? So that they can move along the demand curve. and serve people who really needed rides. And guess what? They'd scale. And I think this, the integral or the sum over that scale of that scaled market gives Alphabet greater profits than by sitting there luxury gooding it. Will he, in cahoots with Uber? I can't understand this business case going forward. Now, I could be wrong that in fact, because of the efficiency by which a driverless vehicle can give rides is such that of course it then creates a demand that is like whatever that achieves that. But guess what? Guess what this guy did? This guy made, the incremental the cost of this thing such that the volume was such that people would find ways and afford it, and it became a volume product. And all the other ones in which technology has gone in there and made it so that laptops, you name it, so that even kids have screens in front of them. You couldn't do that if Intel had decided to basically price its stuff in cahoots with with a I don't know, abacus manufacturer who had an app to sell abaci to people, handmade and whatever, with that amount of productivity available to do computations, we wouldn't have this stuff. I don't know. Again, I'm not an economist and everybody knows it, but I'm just sitting here arguing.
Moving on in the newsletter, Alan, I think we got a couple of other headlines to touch on quickly. Tesla has won its first U.S. autopilot trial involving a fatal crash. You have that in there, a victory for Tesla.
Well, it's unfortunate for what the crash, and people died here, and we have to I mean, there's no way to do business, and whatever, but driving is a privilege, and it requires responsibility for the individual, and everybody should realize that drives a vehicle irrespective of what some name might be, or some whatever commercial might suggest, or what some perception in your mind might be. You got to pay attention, and in the end, the responsibility is yours. That's what the do-it-yourself giving of the business is. If you're doing it yourself to give yourself a ride, right now, the way the world exists, you're the responsible entity. If somebody else decides to take the responsibility of giving you a ride, then they really have to be giving you a ride, and they end up having to be really responsible. And all this stuff is in the gray area between those two pieces. And we would, of course, like to get to a point in which these things are giving people rides. But whenever that happens, by whomever, if ever that happens, that entity has to be responsible for that ride then. And it can be switching back and forth. It can be like a hot potato. Oh, you have it. No, I have it. No, you have it. Which is a challenge. But, I think, again, for Tesla, while there may be commercials and there may be, out there in the dark web, light web, who knows what information, whatever that comes on top of you and on top of all of us, some suggestion that my goodness, Audi, had a car commercial in which it showed a car climbing the Great Wall. Oh my goodness, my car can climb the Great Wall. Jeeps are always shown going down, creeks and ravines, and and how many of these commercials does one see on TV in which people are out in the open, freedom, whatever, not even another car around. I don't know. When I go out in Route 1, it's when people go out in the 405 in LA.
Much more entertaining than showing a parking lot, though.
I'm going to need to
Yeah.
read the case and see how they came to the conclusion. I mean, Tesla's defense in all these cases is that the driver is responsible. We tell the driver you have to keep your eyes on the road, et cetera, et cetera. So from that standpoint, it's very difficult for a judge to say, you've implied through your advertising or for whatever other reason this. But as far, I don't know, was the driver was held responsible in a civil court for this, and now what the parents were doing is going after Tesla and claiming that Tesla, with deeper pockets, was the responsible party. I think that's the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, that may be a cruel way to put it, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the discussion that, when in fact one is mourning, and one is, I mean, these are tough situations. One wants to, who's at fault, and it's tough to say, hey, it's on me because I who knows, whatever, not paying attention, or as we call it, I just want to call it misbehavior, because the misbehavior that exists is like the cruise crash in San Francisco. Look, I mean, the person is jaywalking, the car hits her, takes off, and then the body flies up or whatever, and right in front of the cruise vehicle, which at this point, whoa, do everything I can, and runs over. Tragic. But the start, forget about all the other things that go on. It starts with misbehavior on part of the pedestrian, jaywalking, and total misbehavior on the part of the driver. Not only hitting her for who knows whatever, but then taking off, running.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, of course, I didn't know I hit her. Who knows? I don't want to. Please, I didn't say that. But these are tragic cases. These are just tragic cases. And one looks at them. I think I'm not sure if it's in this one or the next one. The number of pedestrian deaths due to automobiles in the U.S. it's out of control.
We have that in the latest
Yeah,
newsletter,
I
Alan.
guess I have that.
CivicPlus,
Yeah.
they say U.S. drivers kill 20 pedestrians a day. There's a chart showing Black or African American pedestrians face nearly double the risk as white pedestrians.
Well, yeah. I mean, tragedy upon tragedy. My wife Elizabeth, I think both of her grandmothers died in crosswalks. I mean, this is, and as we've said for all 11 years of this stuff that we've been putting this thing out, that probably the technology piece of this thing the most valuable piece of it was what we call it safe driving technology. Put the automated emergency braking systems into cars that actually work and don't hit pedestrians. We have the technology to do that now. And the technology probably has such low failure rates that inadvertent decelerations really aren't going to occur, except extremely rarely, and driving public put up with that. Okay. Don't turn the darn thing off. Don't require it to be turned on. Don't make it only a warning. Make it a damn stop. Automated emergency braking system on all the time that works. The car companies should be doing it. The car companies, what, in 2015 or whatever, said that by 2020, 2022 or something like that, they were all going to put this stuff in there that works. It works a lot better now than it did whatever, 5 years ago when we were looking at those IVHS videos showing, at 12 miles an hour with a stationary object, pop, boom. It didn't, I mean, and there are star ratings that are being put out and given to that, but it should just work. So if we really want to, lobby for something, lobby the industry to do that, because this pedestrian stuff and this bicyclist stuff and this, hitting things in front of you, the backup ones work. Okay, at least that's the latest data that's come out, that the backup ones work. Why? Because you're not going more than 5 miles an hour. And two, just because it stops you when you're backing up, you're kind of thankful. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. Oh, Jesus, it's a kid. Oh my goodness. And those the automated ones work, but they can work up to 70 miles an hour, 75 miles an hour, I think. Or hell, if we can't get that to work, then what are we even thinking about, providing driverless mobility at an affordable price to to people who to change their lives and provide real value out there to the society. I mean, for those
That
who
sounds like
really
a
need
great
a
topic
ride.
for a book. Have you guys thought of that?
Yeah, poor Michael and I are, it's amazing. There's the other thing that I have in there from Safe. Safe's a good entity, and they're looking at the value of driverless mobility and giving people rides in San Francisco, and talk about the air pollution and noise reduction associated with these things. And then they talk about all the other values of driverless mobility, including, of course, safety and whatever. They don't talk about affordability.
No,
They don't talk
no one
about
is.
the opportunity to scale this thing such that the cost of the driver is essentially zero in giving a ride. Okay. And that's how you get affordability. But you get affordability as long as the person that's giving you that ride doesn't want to make absolutely luxury scale profits off of it.
Making claims that driverless cars are more energy efficient is so ridiculous it's not even worth commenting on. To say that driverless cars are safer than cars with experienced drivers at
That
this
are
point
not
in
that,
time
that
is
are
also
not
ridiculous.
misbehaving, throw that one on there.
That are not misbehaving is also ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
But the issue that we've taken up in our book, the real case for driverless mobility, is what we feel is the important issue. If you're going to, the main advantage of a driverless vehicle for providing rides is that you do not have the cost of the driver, which is the principal cost for any chauffeured type of driving, whether it's a taxi or a bus or any type of transportation where someone is paid, or you have the equivalent of payment where someone is providing you with a service that he or she isn't taking money for, but is doing it as a favor. If a family member is taking you on a regular basis to places, their time is worth something. They're doing it as a favor. Maybe they aren't doing it. Maybe they didn't have something else to do that they could be doing. But not everybody has that opportunity either. There are a lot of people who don't have, friends or family who could could take them to doctors and places where they need to go on a daily, maybe on a weekly basis, or getting to work. And that's one thing that we definitely have addressed. People who need transportation that buses and certainly not taxis can provide at a reasonable cost, and getting them there on a daily basis when they need to be there and when they need to come home. So that's what the book is about, and we're hoping that it'll get past all the noise, and people will begin to think about the issue of driverless, from the standpoint of that we've written about, and not these ridiculous issues of being better for the environment, or less noise and less pollution. But that's important too.
The publisher is Elsevier, and we're going to look for it in January.
Yes.
Is that?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. And I think I want to add on top of it, but it turns out that if you do this, then you can, all the other stuff also comes along. All the opportunities to do whatever you want with the environment, whatever, and so on, comes along. And the safety thing, in fact, because these things won't misbehave. They like us, not everything is associated with misbehaviors. There are some things that we didn't know, and therefore, who never thought of that one? And really, those things happen with us as humans, and they're going to happen with that, with driverless. But those are the small pieces. Everybody in Sweden behaves, and guess what? The crash rate it's way lower than the U.S. rate.
That's true.
Okay, yeah. Way lower. What, factor of 5 or something like that? I mean, it's way lower. Look up the number, and so just that in and of itself, that would allow us, if we did that in the U.S., that would allow us to catch up to Sweden. I mean, but there's more that you could get on the safety thing, probably, as the system. But the affordability piece, to give people rides when they really need them, and in a way that has a level of service that is substantially better than what transit can do now. In places where transit has a great level of service, fine. That's not the market. People can continue to do that. Thrilled for them. Okay? No problem. But if you look at the spatial temporal distribution of travel demand in a way that we've decided to organize ourselves in a living and working and playing environment, transit, unfortunately, can't handle it. Okay? And this fills those gaps. And the gaps happen to be, really big, because
very large.
At least in the US, transit is what, at best, 3% of the trips,
4%.
2% of the trips, 4% of the trips, half of which are in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. What happens in Indiana? What happens in South Carolina? What happens in North Carolina and Florida, Texas, where people need rides? Anyway, hope
it's in the book.
It's in the book.
And the title again, The Real Case for Driverless Mobility. We're really looking forward to it. Thank you, Michael, for spending time with us again. Just
my pleasure.
As
always, fun.
The website is Michael L. Sena, SENA.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, wherever you turn to for podcasts as well, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Amazon, Google, wherever. Smart speakers can play us too. You can find my tech reports at textination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alan Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching. Please continue to stay safe.
And have a great weekend.